We're live.
All right.
I'm here.
Hello.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I had some major technology issues.
Hello, and welcome to The Bridge, the monthly webinar series hosted by the Masters of Educational Technology program at Michigan State University. My name is Spencer Greenhall, and I, along with Rohit Mehta, will be your host today. The Bridge is part of our outreach mission to highlight not only the work being done here at the MSU College of Education, but also what's being done by friends of the MAET program. This webinar series is meant to highlight great thinking and leadership on a range of ideas related to education, technologies, and pedagogical practice. We feature MAET alumni, faculty, students, and other friends who, through their research and their experiences in leadership, can enable our viewing audience to consider new perspectives. And we also hope that viewers will learn one or two new things from each Bridge webinar that can inform their teaching practice. Today, we'll be having what we anticipate will be a really engaging conversation on technology integration in second language programs. And if you're watching this webinar live at bridge.educ.msu.edu, we encourage you to contribute questions, thoughts, and comments to the embedded Etherpad on that page, or to participate in the back channel on Twitter. And if you are tweeting about this, we ask you to use the hashtag MAETBridge, which is all one word. And we'll do the best that we can to bring your thoughts and questions into it. We are very excited to be joined by 4 exemplary language teachers and friends of MAET, with the possibility of one more joining us later in the conversation. First, Jamie Perry is an MAET graduate and a Spanish teacher who teaches in Chicago's West Rogers Park neighborhood. Dr. Chin-Shi Lin is an assistant professor of technology and second language education in the Educational Psychology and Educational Technology program here at the MSU College of Education. Jean-Pierre Ossaf is the student services coordinator for the MAET Overseas program and a French teacher at the American School of Paris. And Rahab Rajab is another of our MAET graduates and is joining us from the United Arab Emirates, where she is an ESL teacher, technology integration specialist, teacher trainer, and the immediate past president of the TESOL Arabia organization. Now, you all have experience that I couldn't sum up in those little blurbs. I'd like to turn a little bit of time over to each of you so that you can tell us more about the work that you do and the experience that you have with technology and language teaching. Chin-Shi, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Chin-Shi Lin, and I got my degree at UC Irvine last year, and I did work around language learning and technology. My dissertation is about how to use social media in language learning. I currently examine a topic around online learning, specifically in K-12 environment. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you. Jamie, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Jamie, and I have completed the MAET master's program. And
Jamie, we can't quite hear you. I don't know if anyone else can.
Let me try it again. How about now?
So if you take a look at your mic.
Okay, let me check here.
We can move on.
While we're waiting, Jean-Pierre, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first I want to say hi to Jamie. She's one of my favorite MAET ex-pass students from the program. Hi, Jamie.
Hello.
And so I'm Jean-Pierre, and bonjour de Paris, ou plutôt bonsoir. And this is going to be a first for me to be on a live webinar. As I say, one of the non-techie of the group, or the non-techie of the group. And we studied quite recently at the American School of Paris to integrate technology in the language classes with the little ones, because I teach K through 5th, so the age 5 through 10. Okay?
Hey, thank you very much. And Rahab, are you still with us?
Yeah, I had a little bit of a technical issue, but I'm back.
Rahab, are you with us?
Hello?
Looks like
Can
you
you hear
lost
me?
her.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
All right, Jamie, any luck on the microphone?
Can you hear me now or no? Yay or no?
Okay, nothing yet.
Okay, I will work on it.
Chinchi, can you hear Jamie when she speaks?
Yeah.
Okay, then it's just us, which is
That's
odd.
strange. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So,
Should we assume? I wonder if the people who are live can hear. Jamie,
Yeah.
why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself,
Okay.
and we'll hope that the people who are tuning in can hear you, and then on our end, we're going to try and figure out what's going on.
Okay, sounds good. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I got my master's through Michigan State, the MAET program, a couple of years ago, and my experience with technology before that was very much not novice. I just encountered the master's program and thought I wanted to challenge myself, and it was a fantastic program. And now I have been teaching in Chicago in a public school. I teach K to 12 this year, excuse me, K to 8 this year, more middle grades levels. And my job is I teach Spanish about 2 days a week to about 400 students. So it's an exposure program, and I do my very best to incorporate technology when I can with my students. I don't have my own classroom, so I'm on a cart and I'm pushing, and so there are a lot of challenges, but that's me and that's my story. I'm happy to be here.
Okay. I'm going to guess that's the end of your introduction. Jamie,
Yes,
we figured
sorry.
out that the people who are listening live can hear you, but for whatever reason, we here in the room cannot. So we're going to ask those of our participants who can hear Jamie to sort of help us out and to build off of her questions and answers so that we can sort of catch back in and get back into the loop. So we don't know what's going on our end, but Jamie, we're very excited to hear you. And
Thank you.
Rahab, how about you?
Hello, everybody. I'm also a graduate of the MAET program. I graduated in 2010, and I started the program when my school decided to go one-on-one with laptops, so that was quite a learning experience for me. I moved from teaching one-on-one laptop classrooms to one-on-one iPad classrooms. Now I'm a technology integration specialist and teacher trainer, so I'm so lucky to see different teachers use technology in the classroom, including language teachers, and I do learn a lot from that, in addition to my own experience. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Okay, good. We're going to try something over here so that I can feel like I'm part of the group too.
That's a good idea.
Okay. Okay, Rahab and Jamie, could you try speaking one more time? I'm going to see if this helps.
Sure.
Hi.
Hello, hello,
Okay,
hello.
good. I can hear you now, which is very good. Okay, thanks for helping us get through that hardware difficulty. I think the best way to start a conversation like this is really to discuss, we're talking about technology and second language classrooms. What technologies are available out there? So in your experience, when you talk about technology in your second language teaching, what kind of technologies are you talking about? And Jamie, could you start us off with that? And the rest of you can pitch in with your own ideas.
Absolutely. I tend to think more specifically in just a way to engage students and kind of ignite creativity. And so a lot of the technologies I'm using are not language learning specific. They weren't designed. I'm kind of repurposing them for language learning. And so I have to do a lot of things on the fly. There's not a lot of technology in my building that I have access to with regularity. So my students don't have, we're not one-to-one, and we do not have, iPads, or we do have laptop carts and whatnot, but oftentimes they're unavailable to me. So I'm sometimes trying to incorporate technology with maybe 2 iPods, my iPhone, and maybe 2 computers, things that I have. So I'm looking at technologies that I can use to get kids to speak, to get kids to hear the language, and so I'm doing a lot of things where right now we do a lot with getting the kids more comfortable speaking, because they can read pretty well, they can write well, but that speaking component, it tends to be the missing link for a lot of students who are not speaking any of the language outside of class. And so if I can get them excited, so we do things like little, if I can get them to do things where we use Google Voice, where they're calling me and they're leaving me messages and they're speaking Spanish in the messages and they get very excited. Or we do dragon dictation, where they're speaking the language and then the dictation can tell the students how correct or how close they are to the word. So for me, with seeing hundreds and hundreds of students twice a week, I try to do things to get them very excited about the language, so then outside of class they'll want to go find that technology on their own and continue to use it.
Thank you very much. Chinchi, could you tell us about your experience? You talked about social media. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So the way I see language learning is to interact and communicate with native speakers. So that's why I conduct my research on Like Mocha. If you don't like Mocha, it's a social networking site designed for language learning. It provides hundreds of hours of free materials online, and you have access to a large group of native speakers who are willing to do language exchange with you. So I think this way you get authentic interaction with native speakers outside the classroom. What we really lack in language learning in language classroom is that we do not have authentic interaction or enough opportunity to interact with native speakers. So that's why I do a lot of research on this area.
Thank you very much. Rahab, we'd love to hear from you.
Well, I can actually consider myself lucky. The context where I work has been one-on-one with laptops since 2009, so the dynamics are completely different. We actually can go for long-term projects because students have their devices the whole time, and the infrastructure supports fast internet and excellent Wi-Fi connectivity. So with such an environment, we're lucky to be able to have long-term projects where students actually create, for example, interactive books on their iPads and reflecting on books that they read, or doing some research and presenting it. So they make some mashups of videos and posters, which enhances their writing skills and their speaking skills. Motivation is a big challenge sometimes in the region where I'm working. So I find technology helps students get motivated easily. So we use some very simple apps like Vidulicious. So basically students create very short clips, reflections, and so on, and then they post it online, SoundCloud, and some of the free apps. So encouraging students to learn, and at the same time giving them small tasks, real-life tasks, is something that we can do in our learning environment, which is applicable also in a lot of learning environments where students can bring their own mobile devices, their own smartphones, and so on. So that's basically what I'm focusing on with the training and with the lessons that I'm creating, especially in the past 2 years.
Thank you very much. And Jean-Pierre, maybe you can round us out.
Yeah, well, we're kind of very lucky in our school. First of all, I see my students every day for 40 minutes period. So we don't have really to get the kids excited or motivated because of the nature of our program, because we are in Paris. The kids and the kind of philosophy we use to teach languages in a non-threatening way, in an open and natural way, the kids are generally quite motivated. So we don't need to hook them with what I call, it's no offense, I don't want to sound like a French snob, what I call, gadget apps, So what we're lucky to have this year iPads starting in grades K1 and 2, and we're going to move to have iPads, a set of 20 iPads per grade in the years to come for all the K through 5th grade. Unfortunately, what we're lacking is support, technological support. We have an IT integrator that works only for 20% of her time in for language for integration of technology. But we also have a lab and a cart with laptops. So Jamie, I suffer for you. 400 students and little access to technology. Unfortunately, it's not used enough in our school because the iPads stayed in the IT office for 1 year without being used. So now they're out of the office, so we're starting using them.
So one trend that I've noticed that might be surprising for some language teachers that want to use more technology is that a lot of the technologies you use aren't specifically designed for learning foreign languages. We mentioned LiveMocha, which is pretty clearly a language learning technology. But a lot of you sound like you spend more time repurposing apps and technologies that are actually designed for another purpose. I was wondering if we could spend just a minute getting some thoughts on that, how you find apps that you can repurpose, and how you can, and any tips that you have for repurposing those technologies to make them fit into your classroom.
Well, would you like me to start with this?
Go right ahead.
All right. Well, actually, when I do a lot of teacher training on the iPads especially, and what I call, or maybe what a lot of people call general workflow apps, are the best apps to use for any classroom. So for any language, for example, an app that allows students to record their voice and their own video is a great app. So there are actually very few language subject-specific apps. I've seen a lot of apps. Unfortunately, those subject-specific apps are still not as creative as the general workflow apps that you can repurpose. So creating an iBook, for example, on the iPad is a lot more fun than the drills, the grammar drills, or the vocabulary drills in some apps. And probably also the publishers who offer books for language learning haven't really been catching up with the development of the general workflow apps. So if you look at the competition between the creativity and the higher order thinking that you can create as a teacher using general workflow apps, it's much better than as very, very language or subject specific apps. That's not only, again, related to language learning, but a lot of other apps. Maybe for mathematics and science there are more apps that are creative. For language learning, I really haven't found many apps that address certain skills that are at the same time creative and involve students in higher order thinking.
Mm-hmm. I can continue in that vein. I often am searching for various things as well that I can repurpose and I can find that will work. And I think for me as a teacher, what's the most helpful thing is that if I have an idea that I want to try something, to just go for it and to try it out. And sometimes I find the app that works really well, and I can give you some examples of those. And then I'll have an idea of something that I think will work, and it just kind of, it doesn't quite do what I'd like it to do, or it's just not the right thing. So I think for me, having that, attempting something new and trying to find a way to integrate it, but then kind of throw okay, you know, it's okay to kind of find something that maybe quote unquote failed or whatnot. But for me, again, something that my students love, my students love AudioBoo. They love that they can hear themselves instantaneously, and that then they can go online and because I upload all of them, and then they can go and hear themselves and their classmates, and they're all contained, all of the short little audio clips, and so then they can comment on one another, they can encourage one another, and they can go back and reflect. I mean, they can reflect immediately when they hear themselves, but then later on I can assign something for them to go back again to continue to reflect on, you know, their progress. And so I record them from year to year. So my current 7th graders can go back and hear them speaking Spanish when they were in 4th grade. And, you know, there's always some chuckles and laughter, but they also can see the progress. And so, you know, Dragon Dictation is another one I mentioned, and StoryKit for creating books. And oh,
Sorry about that.
If there's is that my end?
That was my end.
Oh, okay. But so finding those apps and then trying them out with students and being okay with whatever happens, and you'll be pleasantly surprised many times.
So it sort of sounds like, if I can just jump in here for a second, that for the language teacher, having that willingness to tinker and find new apps is just as important, if not more important, than having, you know, a list of the perfect apps to use.
I think so completely.
Yeah.
I agree.
If I may.
Please do.
Okay, so I've looked at a lot of apps, and what I've been using this year with my students are apps that really help them create content or to share with the others what they have done. So I've used with my little ones, with my second graders, like Storybook Creator or 30 Hands, which is an easy tool to do whether I have to retell a story or to do a story extension. I've used Google presentation with my older students, but the idea is to create content and to propose it and to share it with the larger audience, using also QR codes in the hallways, for instance. And I've used PuppetPal very successfully also, but the older version of PuppetPal, where there's very little possibilities to add too many characters or too many backgrounds, etc. That has been quite successful. So we're limiting. I prefer to limit myself to, because I'm kind of leading the way here with the language teachers, to a couple of apps that are going to be used successfully with the students, rather than giving them 20 apps to look at because I know they are going to forget about it. So we limit ourselves to creating content and being able to share content with the others.
Thank you very much. So now that we've talked about some of the technologies that are available, Chinchi, you're a researcher who focuses on technology in second language classrooms. Could you give us a summary of what research tells us about technology in second language teaching?
Sure, definitely. So one thing that researcher usually finds that there's no technology that can be applicable to every language classrooms. Some researchers find, well, this technology may be helpful, but some researchers find this is not helpful. And with these mixed findings, we may be discouraged, but don't be. And because the context is different. What really matters is not technology. What matters is how you use technology. So if I think Spencer take a class with me, and one thing I reiterate many times is that pedagogy should lead how you use technology. You don't have to be fancy, and if you are not successful in your language teaching without technology, you won't be successful with technology. Technology won't change the way you teach. You need to be successful in your teaching, so you will be able to use technology in a better way. So if you want to adopt new technology, you also need to rethink how you want to use it to serve the purpose. So I'm really excited to hear many successful examples of repurposing general apps for language learning, because that's the future of language learning. I think there are two trends. One is to go more about the social learning part, like LikeMocha or Duolingo. If you know this kind of website, it allows you to make friends with other native speakers. But another trend is like what you described, is to repurpose the general app. What really matters is that it gives you a chance to use this app to serve the real life examples. They can do authentic tag with native speakers, with teachers. They actually use the language. I think that's what we really looking forward to use in the future.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add on to that? Does that ring true with you?
Yeah, I totally agree that teachers actually get caught up sometimes in the technology itself, in the what of the technology. Actually, I'm running a course. I'm running a course today and tomorrow on iPads, and one of the very first things that people start getting anxious about the different icons on each app, and they want to know the function of each app. And it's very important to focus on the learning rather than on the technology. And so it's sometimes a lot helpful for teachers to start thinking within a certain theoretical framework when they think about technology integration. Things like the TPACK or the TPACK, summer model, thinking about the thinking skills, the Bloom's taxonomy, and not doing naive attempts in just, you know, going randomly trying to find this app or that app for different purposes, but actually to do a little bit of reading about how others are integrating technology, learning from others. There's a lot of useful tips about technology integration on the internet, and the most useful ones of them will not talk about the technology itself, but about the learning. What is the outcome? What are the skills that you want your students to learn, rather than focusing on, I want to use this tool or that tool, which is very, again, it's very easy to get caught up in that zone and just get stuck in there for a while, especially at the beginning of technology integration.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one question I got asked pretty often is that, Dr. Lin, can you give me a list of best apps for learning English?
Yeah.
Because I can't, because it depends on how you use it, right?
Mm-hmm. I sometimes, if I may jump on, I sometimes have been asked by people who know my technology background and know about the MAET program and everything, and then they'll observe my teaching, and they're expecting the classroom to have that I have these 50 apps that my kids are using, and I'm thinking, no, there's these 2 or 3 or 4 that we love and work wonderfully, and they're very confused, as if they think that it's just going to be this constant overflow of a million different things, and I always kind of chuckle a little bit and have to kind of change their perspective, and it's about what the kids are doing. I couldn't agree with that more. It's about their learning. It's not about these bells and whistles and all of this fancy stuff or the newest thing that comes on board that you want to get. It's about what the kids are doing, and so people often are kind of confused, like, oh, I thought there would be a million different apps the kids are using. Like, no, it's a little different than that. It's a mind shift for some people.
So I think one area that, or one train of thought that sort of builds on this conversation we've been having is that teachers have the misconception that they need to know a lot of apps, and also that they need to be the experts for the app. But Jean-Pierre, you've told me that you actually sometimes rely on your students to bring that expertise in, but that not all teachers are willing to take that step. Could you tell us a little more about your experience?
I know we don't like to relinquish power to our own students, right?
Right.
There was just an example recently that my 5th grade students wanted to do a presentation on Prezi. I had never used Prezi, so I let them do it, Now I know that I will not use it with 5th graders again, but it is some really good presentation, especially they had their own account and they had access at home to content I did not necessarily want them to have, especially when we talk about mythology and Venus and all those other goddesses, Anyway, so I had quite a couple of surprises from when I looked at their Prezi online. But it's very important because, first of all, they are ahead on. They know how to use the technology part. So it's great I don't have to teach that part to them because, again, I am not the techie in there. You did a project also on Comic Live, and I had never used Comic Live. And plus, at the time, we had only the little laptops, and I have problems seeing, so they say, well, don't ask me, go and ask so-and-so. And kids are really great with that, because they don't feel threatened, and they like to explain to each other. So using my students as a resource, I do that frequently, yes. Even if the little ones, they're very comfortable. Even the kindergartners and using Storybook Creator are very comfortable.
Thank you.
If I may,
please do.
Yeah, if I may add something, actually searching for apps and websites is a great learning experience for any second language learning student, because there's a lot of indirect language acquisition that takes place without the intention of actually teaching that vocabulary, for example. We know that a lot of students learn so much from games. So I've seen one of the teachers in our schools get students to read a novel and then recreate scenes from the novel in Minecraft. So that's a perfect way to reflect on their understanding, and indirectly they are using the language, they are using the target language that you want them to learn, and they are learning so much on the way, and they're looking for the resources themselves. So yeah, there's a lot in actually getting the students involved in choosing the technology that they would use to learn with.
Thank you. So Jean-Pierre, you said something at the end that you teach a very young age of students, and I think we represent here experience with different levels of students. I wonder if everyone could just chime in for a little bit and talk about that. What kind of implications that has if we're teaching young children, teaching adults, teaching somewhere in between. How does that change language teaching, and how does that change the technology that we use in our language teaching?
You want me to jump in there?
Sure, go right ahead.
Well, I don't think the fact that my students themselves are more aware. They all have. Again, we are the richest school, so most of my students have iPads, even the very young ones. You know, so they're very comfortable using the technology. They don't necessarily know how to use the tools. They're consumers. You know, so you have to be careful. And when I start a project with my students, I have really to give them a step-by-step indications. You know, when I first started, I let the kids use the iPads. Oh, they know how to use the iPads, but no, they used to waste a lot of time doing other things. So we've created, with the help of one of our tech integrator, a set of steps that the kids had to take before they could use the iPad. Actually, we have like little working stations in the classroom, so they will have the first example. They had to illustrate a song, sing it. The song is a dialogue between two people. Or they had a station where they had to create their own drawings or their puppets, whatever. A second station where they had to talk to me and tell me about how they were going to present the project. And then only then, when I was satisfied with what they had done, they were allowed to take the iPads and to create their stories or their project. So it's really step by step, especially with the little ones, because they want to play.
Right. Thank you very much.
I think something that I work with primarily students in the ages of 10 to 14, and the two things that we focus on so much is that digital citizenship and citing every source, and really, if you're using something, know where it's coming from, and investigating the reputability and the content of the sources they use. And that's something that we do every single year. And students, by the time they're in 7th and 8th grade and they're like 13 or 14, they are it's automatic for them, which I'm very thrilled with, that they know right away that they have to they have to be very conscious of what they're using and where they're getting their information, and citing it. And also, I think something for older students or students from the ages of maybe 10 all the way to high school, even adults, of course, as well, is that concept that the technology overload. You're online and you're trying to, you're doing a project, or you're involved in something, you're chatting or whatnot, and it's just that kind of technology overload, that sensory overload, and you have to learn to sort of filter what it is that you're doing, and kind of teaching kids to focus and not be overloaded in the kind of avalanche of the internet, and I want my students to be able to concentrate for a full period on what they're doing. And that sounds very simple, but sometimes they've never had to do that in technology. They're always doing a million things at once, which it sometimes has a benefit, that multitasking or whatnot. But being able to kind of really focus and is something we try to teach them, so they're not constantly putting their mind and attention in a million places, and they can really focus on what they're doing.
In my learning environment, actually, we have high school students, so grade 9 through 12, and they move from an Arabic-speaking, Arabic as a medium of instruction schools to English as a medium of instruction school, and that's quite a huge shift for them. One of the things that we try to focus on is the balance between face-to-face instruction and device-based. So the tasks that they have to do, especially in the language classroom, has to balance between the amount of face-to-face communication, keeping the human interaction in the classroom, and then and versus working on the device. So a balance between these two, designing activities so that kids are communicating with one another, moving around the room, and at the same time using the technology. It actually requires a lot of thinking from the teacher's side to plan such activities so that the kids are not just interacting with the device the whole time, which they would do actually if the learning activities are not well planned and were not well thought of in advance.
Yeah, I have a question for everyone. So I do not have any successful example using technology with young kids. I mean, kindergarten. Some kindergarten are bilingual, or even from first grade, second grade. What kind of technology you envision that could be used in this kind of context? And the other question is how to protect them, because internet has some inappropriate materials for them. So how do you create a safe environment for your kids?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we've limited ourselves. Well, I've limited myself to the use of some apps. You know, I know that when they do a storybook creator, they use their own pictures. Yeah. Whereas, and in the case of my 5th grade students, I've learned now that I have to create the account to share with them, not to let them create their own account. So we need to we have yet to put in place a procedure, a protocol, a safe protocol, you know. And we don't teach in the lower school like web what do you call that? How to use the web properly, you know. And that's something that needs to be done. But we are very, very careful, and I know from what I saw with that example with mythology that I need to be very careful in creating the environment for students who are going to be safe and only limiting access. We have, of course, in school, the web is limited. You know, there are a lot of sites that you cannot access. You know, it's kind of child safe. The problem is that when you give them assignments to do at home, especially with the 4th and 5th graders, 8 to 10 years old, 1st graders, I don't give them assignments. The problem is when they have to do something at home, because unfortunately, our students have free access to internet, and several of them have Wi-Fi in their own bedroom. So we have to educate the parents too on that subject.
That's a good point.
I don't have I haven't taught that age for a very long time, way before technology came to the classroom. But I've heard from others who shared some ideas through training that, for example, mobile devices can be great standalone learning tools. So basically, they're self-sufficient. You don't have to be connected to the internet. Students can create the content on the device, digital storytelling, and so on. So there are a lot of applications, definitely limited if we compare that to the other ages. But there's definitely a place for mobile devices, especially in a young learner's second language classroom. I don't know about the using the internet and computers, but definitely I've seen some examples from other teachers where students use the iPads or other mobile devices, even iPods in the classroom.
Yeah, so we use mainly iPads with the kids. And that's what I'm interested in. As you said, we can limit content and have to have access to internet, like Storybook Creator or Puppet Pad. You don't need to access the internet for that.
Yeah. So they're good standalone. You don't have to be connected to the internet to actually get some learning happening and some higher order thinking, skills being developed and collaboration and everything.
Great.
Excellent. So I don't think I said this earlier in the broadcast, but my own background is actually also in language teaching. I was a French teacher for a few years before coming to MSU. I'm in an educational technology program now, and I have a few too many gadgets at home, so you'd think that I would be the perfect candidate for bringing technology into the classroom. But even though I have a passion for technology and a passion for language teaching, sometimes I had trouble bringing the two together. So I'm going to be a little selfish here and hope that some of our audience can benefit from this too. But I'd like to ask you some of the questions that I had when I was teaching. And then after that, we're getting some questions from the back channel too. So we'll bring those in too so that I'm not hogging the show. But one of the big things that I was concerned with was I was a brand new teacher in a K-12 environment, and on top of designing my own lessons and making sure that my teaching was effective, I felt like I didn't have the time to really bring technology into the classroom. Can any of you, Jamie, maybe we'll start with you. Do you know of some just quick ways that we can use technology to engage the students in a way that I or other teachers wouldn't feel like it threatens the rest of what I have planned for the day?
Absolutely. I think it's important to, for me, I have the same problem. I have such a limited amount of time to get through my content that sometimes I feel like a little bit overwhelmed. So I definitely understand that feeling of how do I fit it in. And for me, sometimes I've looked at what I can do maybe at the very beginning of the class or at the very end of the class in like 10 minutes sort of segments to sort of get the ball rolling and or to, finish off. And a lot of it is I think that I started there, and I often started at the end of the class, and so I would do like exit slips, but have it be where my students are composing, are tweeting, or they're doing they're chatting online. Like I'll only have maybe 2 devices, but I'll have a chat going between 2 people who are not real people, but yet my students at the end of class would write down their response to a question or something, and then they're going up to that computer very quickly, and they're reflecting in like the last 10 minutes. That's why apps have been important too when it comes down to having students speak or listen and have it be something very quick that they're doing. I think made a difference. One thing I did when I first started, I was very kind of not sure how to put them all together as well. I would do Google Voice, and I would have a student have a telephone, and then we would listen to their voicemail that they left me. And it wasn't my own personal number, of course, but even those little kind of 10-minute bursts of technology kind of built my confidence and also sort of showed me that it doesn't have to be this elaborate project all the time. Of course, that's wonderful, but sometimes, the way that you manage student behavior or the way that you take attendance or all these little things you can find technology, and then the students get excited. And so I think that that's helped me figuring out how to do more. But of course the time is always a problem, so I definitely hear that problem you have.
And JP, I know that this has been a concern where you teach as well.
Yeah, I had to make a case for teach less and learn more, because a lot of my colleagues, we're a team of 6 teachers, it was cool. They said they don't have the time, they don't want to take the time because technology takes time away from instruction. And it is very true, I could be teaching something else, go further in our story, etc. But making a case, and I know how to preach by example, and what I'm trying to convince them is by showing first what my students have done, and to tell them that the main difference that I saw is how much impact they had on each other's learning. Even yes, I didn't go as far maybe in the program, but my students, what they did extremely well. They did help each other. I had paired in one of example using Puppet Pal, for instance. I had put a weaker student with a stronger student, and I really the stronger students got out of the weaker students more than I would have done it myself. Like forcing them to go over the material several times, telling them that this is not good enough. You really have to make an effort. And I was really impressed of that impact that they had on each other's learning. Not only they were engaged in the activity, the final product was great. They were very pleased with it, but they were really engaging each other, supporting each other, and they were learning from each other. And that was superb to see. It was a real pleasure to see how much was going on in the classroom. And yes, I did not teach something else. I'm a bit behind, quote unquote, in the program, but I think it's well worth it. On top of that, students are very proud of what they do. And I say we really don't need to motivate our students too much here, because they are kids, little ones, we see them every day, so they are naturally motivated and happy to be in French class. But to be able to share with the rest of the world what they have done has an immense impact on how much more they want to learn. So it's very motivating. And I'm sure now, and I can see, my students are really progressing very quickly in the language. And I think that type of project really is a plus. But now it's a question of convincing, and I say preaching by example.
Okay, thank you very much. So we've had one excellent question from the back channel. Brian Arnold, an incoming hybrid PhD student in our program, is asking, what skills or behaviors are encouraged in the apps that you think are useful? So what kind of behaviors are they promoting, and how do these apps engage students? And I'll just throw that open to anyone who has an idea.
I think for me, so much of what my kids are doing is collaboration, and then work. I mean, because I have such limited technology, oftentimes kids are working together, and sometimes I have 3 or 4 kids on one device, and to see that interaction of them collaborating together is extremely valuable, and it wouldn't normally be it wouldn't necessarily be there unless I was trying to have the students complete something with such few devices. So that's been a wonderful benefit that I see. And also, just so that collaboration and then the critical thinking skills of, okay, what can we do and how can we do this together, and you know, really expressing themselves in a creative way is something that I find to be very, very valuable.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I think also time management and independent learning. So oftentimes teachers try to master the certain technology, an app or a website, before they introduce it to the students and try to spend time explaining that to the students. Whereas if you just leave it to the students, most of the time, they're going, one of the behaviors that they develop over time is that they become less dependent on the teacher when it comes to how this app works. And I've reached the point where I would actually tell the students the name of the website or the name of the app that I'm going to use for a project next week, and I say, by this time next week, you should be able to use this tool. And as students come in, I would just give them 5 minutes to share what they have learned about the tool. So there's a lot of independence that they develop over time. At the beginning, maybe not, but over some time, they do develop this skill. So this behavior of actually depending on themselves and learning something on their own. Again, in a language classroom, a great skill, because they just search for everything, they look up words, they learn out the interface on their own. So that's been something really nice to see students develop over time.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think students should learn the problem-solving skills, because in real-life example, they need to find out how to use this software. Language teachers tend to be really helpful and want to cover everything in their class time. But we only have limited time, so let students figure out on their own. I think they need to be independent to be able to successful in language learning.
One of the great advantages also that I saw, that kids learn how to compromise, they learn also how to talk to each other and to discuss. And of course, we have a rule in our schools, in our French program, is French only. We cannot speak any English or any other language in the classroom. So everything is done in French. So it's pure benefit. You know, and I like to see them criticize and yell at each other in French. Gently, of course. No,
definitely. Chinchi, you just said something that I'd like to build on a little, and that's about building students' capabilities to work on their own, to learn on their own. And I think that applies to learning the language itself and not just learning new technologies. Could you tell us a little bit about, so your research has focused on Live Mocha, for example, which is what's often called an informal, you know, out of the classroom language learning technology. Could you tell us more about how technology can help us in, you know, outside the classroom in this sort of independent, informal learning, and then how that fits back in maybe with a more formal classroom?
Well, that's a great question, and I haven't figured out how to connect the informal and the formal learning, but the benefit of informal learning is we want to develop lifelong learners. We cannot take 3 years of language classes and expect they are successful and they master the language, right? Language learning is a lifelong process. There are so many cultural things or many subtle differences we cannot cover in our class, and I think that's when the informal learning comes in, because they need to learn on their own. Students learn so much by on their own by reading the novels, the book they like. So I think the power of social learning or this kind of social media is to develop their own intrinsic interest to continue their language learning journey.
Mm-hmm.
And do I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And I'd like to step on that by talking to Jamie as well. So some of our guests are experienced with English as a second language teaching. And there's so much on the internet that's available to students who are learning English because so much of the internet is in English. There's less of the internet that's in Spanish. Jamie, have you found ways to help your students pursue their own interests in the Spanish language, even though there are fewer resources out there than there might be for English language learners?
I have tried very hard to do that, and I find that what's worked well is oftentimes students have interests where it might not be in Spanish, and I kind of allow them to say, I kind of say that's okay, and they take the information they get, and then we work on creating a product that is in Spanish. So, for example, we'll try to do, I've been kind of tinkering with the idea of sort of genius hour, where we have a period of time, if I can find it to carve it out, where students are allowed to research, and a lot of times it's at home, that this is kind of an outside the class assignment, where when we've talked a lot about Spanish artists, or we've talked a lot about different people like Cesar Chavez, who have, you know, worked worked in civil rights and whatnot, and musicians, and so I'll spark their interest in something, whether it's history, whether it's art, whether it's, you know, culture, something, and allow them to go do that research or find something, and at times what they're finding, because what they're finding sometimes isn't in English, but if they're interested in it, I'm very thrilled, and it is part of their language learning journey, and then the product, whether it's the project or whether it's you know, the paragraph that they're writing, or whether the presentation that they're giving, we'll work on taking that and putting it into the language. So again, I wish there were a little bit more resources, and sometimes they'll find this fantastic article about, you know, Rita Moreno or something, and it's in Spanish, and they're thrilled. And so for them to be excited about finding an article that they can understand in the language is another. Love the things that people have said about sparking that independence outside of class. And so when the kids come in and they want to tell me all this that they've learned, that the project, I think, okay, then this was a success. But then sometimes taking that and putting it into the language is creating that learning experience that I'm looking for.
Thank you very much. And just to embarrass our tech host Rohit here, I know that one big motivation of his for studying the French language so that I can barely speak English, was so that he could watch films in French and pursue his own interests in that area. So I think we definitely can all rally behind that idea that if the students are interested in the content, then they'll be a lot more likely, they'll be more engaged when they're learning that language. Mm-hmm. So we have time for a few more questions. And I have some questions here, but first, are there any questions that you have come up with, any thoughts that you'd like to share that you haven't had a chance to do so yet?
Not really.
Okay, then I'll keep asking my questions and I win. All right, so Rahab, could you tell us a little bit about how the dynamic in the classroom changes when we introduce these technologies? We've hinted at this a little bit. We've talked about engagement and things like this, but are there other parts of the classroom that change that teachers should anticipate as they start bringing technology into their teaching?
I think once technology comes into the classroom, everything changes, really. The order of the tasks, the way you deliver instructions, for example, to the students changes. So instead of delivering verbal instructions all the time to the students or written instructions. There's so many other ways you can give instructions to students. QR codes, they go around and they, for example, scan them and they get, you know, the task that they're supposed to do. That changes a lot in the dynamics. The way students answer questions, for example, in a language classroom, it can be, there's a lot of ways for formative assessment that can be done easily. So a teacher can create a poll on Socrative or on Poll Everywhere or on Nearpod, and then you send it to everybody, and you kind of avoid having that, you know, really active kid who's always shouting out the answer, because everyone gets a chance to have their input. That changes a lot in the dynamics of what happens. Again, the way students present products for their things that they create. So before, for a writing assignment, for example, for any language classroom, they would write it, and then the teacher would be the only audience to this piece of writing that they've created. But now there are so many other ways where they can create a telegami with an avatar, you know, speaking, or creating an RSA animate where they are telling a story and then there's drawing in the background. So many other ways for them to share things that they produce or create. So, and all that changes a lot in what happens in the classroom, the time spent on different tasks, and the roles of the teacher and the students. Sometimes teachers wait until they get to this very their comfort zone with the technology, whereas sometimes it's okay not to know. I've used GarageBand with a group of students for the first time, and I had no idea how the app worked, and all of a sudden they know, oh, I know how to do this, and then they showed us, they reflected their iPads and they showed us how the app works, and then we started using it. So it's the role of the teacher and the students changes completely, and it's very important for teachers to get into that, to be okay, to be comfortable with the fact that, oh, maybe my students know more about this, and it's okay if they, you know, become the presenter in the classroom who is going to tell us how we're going to use this, and they become so proud of the fact that they're actually showing the teacher something she or he doesn't know. So that all that changes a lot in the dynamics of what happens when technology comes to the classroom.
Thank you very much. So, I think this is a good time. We have a traditional end of webinar question, and it's my favorite question to listen to, because it comes back to why we're all on this webinar and why we're all doing what we're doing. And that question is, what makes you happy in your work? What makes you happy? Let's start with Chin-Shi.
Wow, that's a big question. What makes me happy with my work? And I'm always excited about using new technology, and I really want to use it to facilitate the learning and teaching process. I think that's what makes me happy. I want to see people learning language with fun and using innovative way.
Thank you very much. Jamie, what makes you happy?
That's a great question. I think what makes me happy is seeing the growth of students over time, and seeing kids step out of their comfort zone in the language classroom and using technology, or just in life in general, and growing and having new experiences, and those aha moments of, oh, I can speak Spanish. Wow, you did understand me. Or even if it's not necessarily related to language learning, but just, oh, I can get up in front of the class and present something, and to see that look on a student's face of a new experience and confidence and growth, that's what makes me happy.
Thank you. Jean-Pierre.
Well, I'm greeted every morning by smiling kids, so that makes me very happy, you know. The kids are really, well, I don't necessarily go home with a smile on my face, but I go to school with a smile on my face too. And the kids are really worth it, and what excites me about teaching languages is to see how when the language starts to emerge and when the student starts really communicating with me in French. So those are very precious moments, and we have a lot of moments of grace in the classroom, lots of them.
Thank you.
Kids are worth it.
Rahab.
I think it always makes my day when a teacher comes to me after we had some kind of a training, and then they say, you know, that idea, you know, that app that you told me, I have a great way to use it, and I've done this with my students, and it works just right. That usually really makes my day. It makes me really happy to see it working in for other people, and then they grow, and sometimes I think, oh, why did I think of that? That's really clever way to use this tool. So this is usually a very precious moment when teachers tell me that.
Thank you very much. So in the first webinar of the Bridge, we had 2 hosts and 3 guests, and every single one of us held a passport from a different country. And I think this is a tradition that we've continued in today. We represent a variety of nationalities, a variety of experiences, a variety of native languages, and a variety of languages that we teach. And in my mind, this is the perfect way to do one of these webinars. It shows that we have friends of the MAET program all over the world, and that we just have so much to draw on when we have these kind of questions. And so I'd like to thank you all, to say shia, gracias, merci, and shukran. And to thank you all very much. I feel like I've learned a lot personally as a language teacher, and I know that our audience has as well. I'd like to remind our audience that if you've only caught part of this, that we will be posting this video in its entirety to the bridge.educ.msu.edu website, that we encourage you to take a look at it, to share it with your friends who have questions, to share it with your colleagues who are asking the same kind of questions that you are, and then also just to keep in touch. We'll be sharing some of the resources that we've talked about in this webinar today, as well as a few others that our guests have identified, and we would be more than happy to continue this conversation with you through other channels. So thank you all very much, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You've been a great host. Thank you.
Adios.